Lila, age 8, should not have been allowed to handle a weapon. But her father's last gift to the world was an insurance policy. It took the form of a single block of iron ore. That was all that remained of a man who once embodied strength, courage, and love. His name was James Greyson, or Jimmy G, as everyone called him. A renowned sniper with trident, Jimmy G had trained Lila since birth, readying her for the inevitable. It was early 2024 and war was imminent. The Korean peninsula was tense, threatening to ignite. Jimmy G's final mission was to train South Korean soldiers, bridging the gap between modern technology and old tactics. His team completed live fire drills and taught the Koreans how to hold their ground against overwhelming odds. Yet victory hung by a thread. Jimmy G knew it might be his last tour. His wife and kids were stateside, his daughter barely 7. He wrote them letters, hiding his true feelings. As the tension mounted, so did the death toll. Each night Jimmy G would whisper stories into the receiver, telling Lila about life beyond the battlefield, hoping to inoculate her against the inevitable. Little did he know these would become her only memories of him. A rogue mortar attack killed 3 of his team. Jimmy G, grievously wounded, crawled to safety. By the time medics reached him, his breathing was shallow. They airlifted him out, but it wasn't enough. At Walter Reed, he clung to life. His wife cradled him as he whispered his final goodbyes. A year of grief followed. They buried Jimmy G with full military honors, the flag folded over his coffin. Back in Virginia, Lila picked up a rifle for the first time, her small hand wrapping around the stock, feeling its weight. In late August, news broke. North Korea crossed the border. Within hours, thousands of US troops were mobilized. Lila's mother panicked. How could history repeat itself? She pleaded with her husband's brother to keep Lila away from weapons. Meanwhile, in Delaware, a Navy SEAL team arrived to escort Jimmy G's brother to safety, but he refused to leave. He was a soldier, he said, through and through, so they left him behind. It was too dangerous. When the evacuation order came, it didn't specify civilians. Lila's uncle was gone, presumably dead. So Lila's mother packed a bag. "We're going to my parents' house," she told Lila. "You can bring 1 toy and 1 outfit." Lila chose a t-shirt and cargo pants. She put on her favorite hat and grabbed her rifle. Her mother recoiled. "Put that down," she snapped. But Lila kept a tight grip. She had never been disobedient before. Now fear twisted her mother's face. She realized Lila wasn't just a child anymore. This tiny figure had the makings of a warrior, and though her mother wanted to protect her, she knew she had to be ready. 2 weeks later, they were safe in Ohio. But the media was relentless. Every day brought new horrors, casualties, destroyed towns. One evening while her mother dozed, Lila crept downstairs. She pulled up a chair to the TV and watched silently. The SEALs on screen moved with deadly grace. Stealth, precision, teamwork. They were warriors, but they also seemed happy. Lila wanted that, to be like them. She would need training. That's when she heard about the SEALGRAPH Invitational. It was open to veterans and active duty personnel, but anyone could attend. The top contenders would be flown out to Coronado for advanced training. Lila knew what she had to do. She found her father's old uniform, a dress blue with a trident pin. It fit her perfectly. The next morning, she left the house before dawn. She walked to the local shooting range, shouldering her father's rifle like an oversized musket. It looked ridiculous, but she didn't care. This was her path now. At the range, she met Ronan Gray. He was the owner and an ex-SEAL. He stared at her in disbelief. He'd trained hundreds of students but never a child. Still, he saw something in her eyes, so he agreed to teach her. For 2 months, he drilled her on the fundamentals: stance, grip, breath control. She picked it up quickly, but something was missing. He couldn't let her go further. Lila knew there was more to marksmanship than hitting targets. It was about patience, discipline, respect for the weapon, and it was lonely. She understood that better than anyone. So she invited Ronan to dinner. He hesitated but accepted. At the Grieg family table, Lila's mother tried to hide her worry. "What if she gets hurt?" she asked Ronan. "Your brother-in-law wouldn't want that." "I'll make sure she's safe," Ronan promised. On the drive home, Lila asked, "Do you miss the others?" Ronan knew who she meant. "Every day," he admitted. "They were my brothers. I went to hell and back with them. You honor them by keeping their memory alive." That hit home. Lila knew her father was dead, but she still missed him. Meanwhile, Colonel Richard Stern watched the best of the SEALGRAPH Invitational. Every year the event drew elite snipers from around the country, pushing them to refine their craft. But this year something was different. A new competitor had emerged, someone whose skill set defied explanation. Her name was Lila Greyson. She entered the competition solo, unsponsored, her father's weathered rifle slung over her shoulder. Her calm demeanor hid steely determination. She took her place alongside seasoned veterans, each a master in their own right. The targets flickered on, bathing the range in a ghostly glow. The crack of rifles echoed as shot after shot broke the silence. Stern watched intently, his gaze lingering on Lila. She moved with an eerie familiarity, like a ghost from his past. As the martyrs progressed, Lila's scores climbed higher and higher, nearing perfection, but the competition was fierce. Blake Wilson, a Navy SEAL, matched her every move. He was tall, muscular, a picture of physical fitness. His eyes were sharp, focused. The crowd buzzed with excitement. Who would win, Lila or Blake? The final target flickered to life, activating cameras and sensors. Both competitors took their positions, their faces illuminated by the screen's glow. A bead of sweat trickled down Blake's temple. He felt the pressure of the crowd's gaze, but he'd thrive under it. He squeezed the trigger. A split second later, the monitor lit up, revealing a bullseye. The audience applauded, but Blake knew Lila had to do better. He glanced at her and saw ice in her eyes. This wasn't a game. This was her life. She inhaled deeply, centered herself, then pulled the trigger. Time seemed to slow. The bullet ripped through the air, finding its mark. A collective gasp swept through the crowd as the monitor flashed a perfect score. An uneasy calm descended. Leah had edged ahead, but Blake wasn't finished. He took aim and fired again. Another bullseye. The crowd roared. Now it was Lila's turn to match him. She closed her eyes, remembering her father's lessons, steeling herself for the challenge. The crowd held their breath. The monitor lit up. Perfect again. Lila's victory was clear. There was no denying her skill. But when she turned to collect her prize, a shadow fell over her. Colonel Stern stood before her, his gaze intense. In that moment, Lila knew the competition was over. She'd caught the attention of the most legendary SEALs in the game. Now came the real test. "I've seen enough," Colonel Stern declared, breaking the silence. The room turned silent. All eyes were on Lila. "You may think you're ready, kid, but you haven't met the standards yet." "I'll meet any standard," Lila stated, her chin held high. "Good," Stern said. "Then pack your things. You're coming with me." Everyone stared at Lila, wondering why Stern was taking her along. What was he planning? The next day, Lila stood before a massive wall of equipment and weapons. She felt like a tiny boat in a storm. "Grab a rifle and get to the targets," Stern commanded. He gestured towards several figures moving about. "Those are your instructors. If you can't pass their tests, you're out." Lila nodded, grabbing a rifle. She joined the other recruits, her heart pounding. It was time to prove herself. "Hey there, everyone. It's me. Hope you're all doing well today." So this is Chapter 6 of Echoes of War. If you haven't checked out the playlist yet, check it out at your convenience. For those who are new to the story, I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoyed writing it. With that being said, let's get right into the story. Chapter 6. Colonel Stern sat in his office long after the range had cleared. His eyes were fixed on the monitor playing the slow-motion footage of Lila's shots. Each round struck its mark with eerie precision. No hesitation, no correction, just instinct and memory guiding her hands. The casual observer might have called her lucky. Stern had seen too many sharpshooters to fall for that. She wasn't lucky. She was trained, and that unsettled him more than he cared to admit. He made a call, then left the base and drove toward the last place he knew James Greyson had stayed. The next morning, a Humvee pulled up a dirt road toward a secluded cabin nestled beneath towering pines. The vehicle stopped before a porch swing, and a woman opened the door before the knock. She wasn't surprised to see Stern, only tired. She had expected this visit. "You're here about Lila," she said. She sounded resigned. Stern nodded. "I saw her shoot," he replied. "I've seen grown men flinch under pressure." She didn't blink. Karen nodded, stepping aside. "She's in the back, practicing." He followed the faint sound of steel pings to a corner of the yard where Lila stood by a set of makeshift targets, her father's rifle steady in her hands. Her posture was identical to James. A bullet rang out, striking a can tab that dangled from a tree branch 50 yards away. Then another and another. The rhythm was hypnotic, each shot overlapping the previous, a testament to both skill and control. Stern cleared his throat, stepping into the clearing. Lila turned surprised, momentarily breaking her focus. "Miss Greyson," he began, but she cut him off. "It's Lila." "Lila," he repeated, unsure why her father hadn't insisted on using her real name during their last conversation. Hadn't he wanted her to disappear, to shed the past? "What do you want?" she asked, her voice flat, emotionless, just like her father. Stern glanced at the rifle, then back at her. "You shoot very well, Lila." That was an understatement, but it was all he could think of at the moment. "Thank you. I saw your targets at the base." Impressed, she offered no other response. Stern shifted, searching for the right words. He didn't find any. "I want you to train on base," he blurted out. "Supervised, monitored, nothing intense. Just, no." Stern stopped. "Just what?" I said no. Her tone brooked no argument. "We need to understand your abilities, Lila. It would be in your best interest to help us." She snorted, turning away. "You saw what I did on the range. You want to dissect it, fine, but I won't be a lab rat." "That's not what I meant." "Then what do you mean?" "I want to offer you a chance, Lila. A chance to honor your father's memory, to continue his legacy." Her reaction was swift and violent. She spun around, eyes blazing. "Don't you understand? He's dead. I'm all that's left. So don't try to take me away from this, from what's left of him." Her outburst startled him. Was this a grief or something older, darker? Stern realized he didn't know either of them as well as he thought. "Karen," he called out, nodding toward the house. "Tell Lila that dinner's ready." The woman in the doorway smiled faintly. "She'll be out in a minute." Stern watched her go and then turned back to Lila, who was staring down the barrel of her rifle. "Your father would want you to help others. To teach, to pass on the skills he spent a lifetime honing. He'd also want me to stay away from people like you." "Fair enough." He gave her a wry smile. "I don't take it personally. Your father was a legend. It would break my heart if you thought I'd replace him. And believe me, I wouldn't even try." Silence fell once more. Lila lowered her rifle. "How do you know so much about him?" Stern shrugged. "I knew your father when he was alive. We trained together, fought together. He was the best I ever saw. Even in his darkest moments, he never lost his humanity. And I see that in you. It pains me to think that you're alone, that you're hurting. If there's anything I can do to help ease that burden, please let me know." She stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then finally, she spoke. "I suppose a little company wouldn't hurt." Later that week, Lila stepped onto the military base again. This time she wore jeans and a t-shirt instead of morning black. Her boots were laced tight, her hair braided. A pack lay at her feet. She was dressed for action. Soldiers watched her like an enigma. Some doubted, most were curious. She didn't talk much. She watched, listened, learned. After the initial awkwardness wore off, Stern found himself enjoying her presence. It was like having a piece of James with them, a reminder of the good that still existed in the world. In a blind fire simulation, she outscored 3 veterans. In a pressure drill, she corrected a sniper's stance with just a gesture. Stern observed from a distance, arms crossed, less skeptical now. But it wasn't until her rifle jammed during a recoil test that she panic flared. Her hands trembled. She backed away, shaken, not from danger, but from imperfection. And in that moment of quiet failure, someone new watched her from the shadows. Captain Reese Walker was used to being in the shadows. He was a man comfortable with silence, adept at disappearing into the background, not because he lacked confidence or was afraid of the spotlight, but because he understood the value of anonymity. It allowed him to observe without distraction, to analyze and strategize. This quality had served him well, earning him promotions and commendations. But now he was beginning to question his chosen method. What if being seen was not a weakness, but a strength? He had been assigned to monitor Lila Greyson, an assignment he initially considered beneath him, supervise a teenager. He was a decorated soldier, not a babysitter. Yet he couldn't deny the curiosity that drew him to the shooting range that day. And as he watched her, his doubts only grew. This was no ordinary girl. He saw a keen intelligence in the way she moved, a lethal grace. And when her rifle jammed and she panicked, he saw something else, a vulnerability that made her human, that intrigued him. Could someone so young, so inexperienced, possess such power? The question echoed in his mind, demanding an answer. As the days passed, Reese continued to watch Lila, not from a distance like Stern, but closer, silently, patiently. He wanted to understand her, to know what made her tick. He knew he was walking a dangerous line, blurring the boundaries between observation and obsession. But he couldn't stop himself. He was drawn to Lila like a moth to a flame. Meanwhile, Lila was struggling with her own feelings of displacement. She missed her father terribly. The memories they shared echoed in the empty rooms of her house, mocking her solitude. Training was an escape, a way to channel her grief into something productive. But even there, she felt like an outsider. The soldiers respected her, even admired her skills, but they didn't accept her. They saw her as a guest, an anomaly, not one of them. Lila yearned for connection, for understanding, but felt isolated in her pain. One evening, while training with Reese, Lila pushed herself too hard. She ignored the warning signs in her body, the fatigue, the muscle tension, and paid the price. An old injury flared, sending searing pain through her shoulder. She cried out, dropping her rifle. Tears welled up, blurring her vision. She wanted to quit, to crawl into a hole and disappear. But something stopped her. Maybe it was Reese's concerned face peering at her from the shadows, or the echo of her father's voice urging her to push on. Whatever the reason, Lila took a deep breath, forced herself to stand, and finished the exercise. When she finally allowed herself to rest, she noticed Reese watching her. He was closer than usual, his gaze intense. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked. His voice was gruff, but his eyes were gentle. Lila hesitated, surprised by his concern. "I'm fine," she whispered. "You don't have to prove yourself to anyone," he said quietly. "Not to me, at least." Those words struck a chord, resonating in the depths of her soul. For the first time since her father's death, Lila allowed herself to relax, to lean on someone other than her grief. And that's the end of chapter 6. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. How do you think Reese's character is developing? What do you think his intentions are? Do you think Lila and Reese's friendship will deepen? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this chapter. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Thank you for listening. Take care. Alright, we're live. This is your host. Today we have an incredible story about determination, grit, marksmanship, and also family legacy. It's a really compelling piece. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Here we go. The wind swept across the open range as the final event of the SEAL Precision Trials began. Lila stood behind the starting line, dwarfed by the towering soldiers, their faces grim, focused. Above them, media drones circled like predatory vultures, their humming a stark counterpoint to the solemn occasion. In her hand, Lila held a Remington 700, her rifle as polished and worn as her soul. It had been her father's pride and joy before he left this world, leaving her with a weapon and a heart full of lead. Now she rested the rifle's stock against her chest, her gaze on. From the corner of her eye, she saw the familiar feathered charm dangling from the rifle's sling, swaying gently in the breeze. It was the same charm her father used to carry when he was in the service, a symbol of his prowess and a reminder of the legacy she was determined to uphold. A heavy silence fell over the crowd as Colonel Stern, his face etched with years of service and sacrifice, strode towards Lila. Usually booming and boisterous, was uncharacteristically hushed. "Lila," he began, his eyes searching hers. "You know the stakes. The ghost course has never been cleared without a miss." Even Blake flinched once. He went double platinum. Lila, her jaw set with determination, her eyes locked on the imposing array of metal targets in the distance. She wasn't listening to the colonel's words. She was listening to the wind whispering through the tall grass, to the soft thud of her own breath echoing in her ears, to the expectant silence of the range itself, which seemed to hold its breath as if sharing her focus. She was one with the moment, her entire being tuned to the symphony of the elements. The air crackled with tension as the timer suddenly buzzed to life, signaling the commencement of the trials. Time, like a predator, was ready to pounce. Lila reacted instinctively, fluidly, gracefully, like water finding its path. She shifted, her movements precise, economical, each muscle in her body engaged in perfect harmony. In an instant she was in motion, closing the distance between herself and the first target. The report of her rifle cracked at the silence, echoing across the range, a testament to her skill, her training, her resolve. The crowd gasped, their faces a mixture of awe and disbelief, as they witnessed the precision with which she took down each target. The air grew thick with anticipation, each shot resonating with the force of a heartbeat, driving home her unwavering focus. With every movement, Lila became one with her rifle, her every thought, every fiber of her being directed towards the task at hand. The wind, the trees, the very essence of the range seemed to stand still, captivated by the display of marksmanship unfolding before them. As Lila danced gracefully through the course, the sun filtering through the canopy above cast dancing shadows on the ground, creating a mesmerizing spectacle of light and motion. It was as though nature itself was holding its breath, reluctant to break the spell. Yet even in this moment of intense concentration, there were subtle signs of the deep well of emotions that coursed through Lila. The set of her shoulders, the tilt of her chin, the fleeting smile gracing her lips betrayed the inner turmoil she wrestled with, the memories that spurred her on, the fears she kept at bay. Her father's words echoed in her ears, a constant refrain urging her forward. She could almost feel his presence beside her, his pride, his belief in her, anchoring her to the task at hand. The rhythmic cadence of gunfire and the worry of the timer created a haunting melody, a dirge for the past, a requiem for the ghosts of memories that lingered on the wind. But Lila pressed on, her resolve hardening with each passing moment. The final target shimmered into view, barely discernible in the dappled sunlight filtering through the trees. It was as though the very essence of the challenge had materialized before her, taunting her with its elusiveness. The wind, mischievous and unkind, played tricks, distorting the target's image, testing her mettle. Time, relentless and unforgiving, ticked away, each second echoing the urgency of her purpose. For Lila, the world shrunk to the target and the rifle in her hands. The rest faded away, becoming a distant hum. There was only the target, the gun, and the internal rhythm of her focus. Time seemed to contract, collapsing the distance between past and present. In that split second, Lila found her father again, not in a memory, but in the shared focus, in the communion of purpose. The target trembled, then burst into a shower of sparks, a silent explosion of triumph. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices thundering across the range, mingling with the echoes of gunshots and the triumphant beat of Lila's heart. But amidst the din, there was a moment of profound stillness, a pregnant pause that spoke volumes. No one moved, no one spoke. All eyes were fixed on the target, on the red dot that blazed triumphantly, a beacon of accomplishment in the aftermath of the storm. It was more than a bullseye. It was a testament to Lila's skill, her spirit, and her unwavering resolve. In that solitary red dot, the culmination of countless hours of practice, the embodiment of her father's legacy, shone forth. But for Lila, the cheers of the crowd, the approving nods of the assembled elite, meant little compared to the quiet satisfaction that swelled within her. She knew what this moment truly signified, not just a victory, but a connection to her past, a tribute to her roots. As the applause continued to reverberate around her, Lila stood tall, her shoulders squared, her chin held high. She had faced the ghosts of the past and emerged victorious. The range was alive with excitement and anticipation. Speculation ran rampant among the spectators, each eager to discuss the upcoming showdown between two snipers renowned for their skills. The tension was palpable, the atmosphere thick with expectation. Some whispered, "Who will prevail? Who has the edge?" Others reminisced about legendary duels of the past, their voices hushed with reverence. In the annals of sniper history, tales of such duels were spoken in hushed tones, each encounter a testament to the mental fortitude and physical precision required of these elite marksmen. Karen stood apart from the crowd, her gaze fixed on the approaching figures. Her heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat of anxiety echoing the suspense of the moment. Her iced pools of unspoken emotion betrayed the turmoil within, the weight of expectations, the echoes of past rivalries, the personal stakes all pressed upon her, making it difficult to breathe, to think, to be still. She felt as though the very essence of the duel hung in the balance, not just for the snipers, but for all those gathered, for the legacy of marksmanship, for the honor of their craft. Among the crowd, a man clad in weathered leather turned slowly, his face obscured by the shadow of his Stetson. His eyes, sharp and keen, missed nothing. He stood silently, his gaze unwavering, his presence a testament to years of experience and a deep understanding of the trials these men were about to undertake. A low whistle escaped his lips, a sound barely audible above the murmur of the crowd, yet it carried a weight of meaning. It was an acknowledgement of the skill, the dedication, the sheer grit it took to stand where these snipers were about to stand. His eyes glinted with an emotion that was hard to decipher: admiration, respect, perhaps even a hint of apprehension. For someone who had walked the path of a sniper, this duel was more than a competition. It was a ritual, a test of wills, a dance of precision and patience. He knew there would be no room for error, no margin for mistakes. Every heartbeat, every breath, every blink would be scrutinized. For a sniper's duel was not just about skill. It was about control, about discipline, about the ability to remain unseen, unheard, yet deadly. The man in leather straightened slowly, his gaze sweeping over the assembled crowd. In that moment, he seemed to encompass the very essence of the trials, the hopes, the fears, the anticipation, the raw human drama that unfolded beneath the harsh glare of the spotlight. With a final, almost imperceptible nod, he melted back into the crowd, leaving behind the faint trace of his presence, a whisper in the wind, a shadow in the light. Lila stood at the edge of the parade ground, the roar of celebration fading around her. It had been a good day, an exceptional day. The base was alive with the sounds of drums and laughter, the shouts of children playing in the street. Soldiers milled about in dress uniforms, their laughter ringing out under the fading light of a summer evening. Lieutenant Renko even let loose a few bars on the trumpet before settling down to watch the kids chase fireflies. Music drifted out from the open doors of the PX, tinny but cheerful. The celebration hadn't been for her though. Their victory hadn't been hers. She hadn't fired a single shot. She just stood guard by the memorial wall until the others were ready to come home. A hollow ache sat behind her ribs like a stone lodged deep inside her chest. She wanted to go find the others, to laugh and shout and celebrate. She wanted to join in the joy echoing across the base, but her feet were rooted to the dusty ground, anchored by the cold marble beneath her boots. That evening, the base fell quiet. The celebrations faded and the soldiers returned to their routines, washing up, shaving, preparing for bed. Sleep wouldn't come to any of them. Not tonight. Tonight, they would remember. They would grieve. Lila remained at the memorial wall. No one asked her to stay. She simply didn't move. She didn't need to touch the names carved there to feel their presence. She could sense their thoughts echoing around her, their memories whispering in the evening air. So many stories, so many lives cut short, dreams left dangling, unfinished business. Anger simmered within her, hot and heavy, twisting in her gut. Why? Why were these faces here? Why were these names carved in stone if no one would answer for them? What was the point of honoring them when the world would never know their sacrifice? What was the point of the wall if all it did was gather dust? She reached out, fingers tracing the engraving of one name, James Greyson. She couldn't bring herself to touch the rest. Not tonight. She pressed her palm against the polished plaque, her reflection staring back at her, small but steadfast. Footsteps crunched on the gravel behind her. Startled, she whirled around to see Colonel Stern approaching. He paused beside her, hands in his coat pockets. His usual confident stride faltered here, replaced by measured steps, head bowed. For once, he didn't speak right away. For once, words failed him. "He was one of the best I ever served with," he finally said, his voice gruff, betraying none of the turmoil within. But no one ever mentioned his daughter was sharper. Lila smiled faintly, still facing the wall. "He used to say that the bullet doesn't matter and the reason you fire it." "He was right," Stern said quietly. Then after a long pause, he added, "And today, you gave this place something it's been missing." She turned toward him, a new steadiness in her eyes, a flicker of something akin to pride, but she pushed it down. Now wasn't the time for that. There was too much work to be done. What happens now? That's up to you, he replied. You're not a soldier, but you've earned the respect of every one of them. If you choose to walk this path, it'll be hard, unforgiving. Lila looked back at her father's name, her hand resting firmly on the carved stock of his rifle. She knew what he would say if he could see her here, standing resolute. He would tell her she was being too hard on herself, that she didn't have to do this if she didn't want to. He'd remind her that strength came in many forms, not just the barrel of a gun. He'd tell her to go home, to rest, to live. But that wasn't why she was here. She wasn't doing this to prove anything to anyone. She was doing it because she knew who she was now. Stern looked at her a moment longer, then it was the fastest salute she'd ever seen him give. No room for the usual condescension, no humor, only acknowledgement, pure acknowledgement. From across the yard, Karen watched in silence, her features etched with pride. The wind picked up again, rustling the trees, carrying with it the distant call of something old. Legacy, perhaps, or purpose. She turned back to the wall, her silhouette framed by the dying light. She no longer saw just names carved in stone. She saw friends, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters. Each name represented a life extinguished, a future forfeited, a dream deferred. She felt their pain, their anger, their love, their loss. Lila felt their pain. She heard their cries. She understood their anger. But most of all, she saw their love. Love for each other. Love for their mission. Love for the ideals they died for. She felt their pride, their unwavering belief in each other, in their cause. She realized that their strength wasn't just in their arms or their rifles, but in the bonds they'd forged, in the hearts they'd shared. She remembered the weight of her father's words, the echo of his laughter. She thought of the stories he'd told her, the missions they'd discussed. She recalled his steady hand on her shoulder, the twinkle in his eye as he'd taught her to shoot, the pride in his voice as he'd praised her form. She missed his hugs, his gruff bedtime stories, his quiet companionship. She missed the way he smelled, the way he laughed, the way he made her laugh. As she stood there enveloped by the ghosts of fallen soldiers, she felt their presence, not as a burden, but as a solace. They were here with her, guiding her, supporting her. She wasn't alone. She was part of something bigger than herself, something enduring. When the wind whispered through the trees, she no longer heard lament, but a stirring call to action. They weren't here to be mourned. They were here to be honored, to be remembered, to be followed. Their spirits surged through her, lending their strength to her resolve. She turned away from the wall, her shadow stretching long and lean across the gravel. Her rifle was heavier now, but her step was surer. She walked with a ghost at her side, their footsteps echoing across the silent parade ground. Lila had found her purpose, not in the barrel of a gun, but in the legacy of those who'd given their all. She wasn't just James Grayson's daughter, she was Lila Greyson. She was the memory keeper. She was the voice of the voiceless. She was the one who would ensure that their sacrifice was not in vain. She joined the others in the mess hall, their laughter and chatter swirling around her. She didn't try to join in. She didn't have to. Her presence was enough. They felt it, sensed it, respected it. Karen watched her from across the room, a faint smile gracing her lips. She knew that Lila wasn't one of them. Not completely. But she also knew that Lila had found something here, something worth fighting for. Later, as the base settled into a restless sleep, Lila sat in her room, the darkness broken only by the dim glow of the nightlight. Her journal lay open on her lap, its pages filled with stories, with memories, with dreams. She wrote by the light of the moon, her pen scratching across the paper, each stroke a testament to the lives that touched hers. In the silence of the night, she heard their whispers, the ghosts of soldiers past. They shared their stories with her, their laughter echoing in her ears, their voices filling her heart. She was their keeper, their chronicler, their daughter. She was their legacy. The wind howled outside, rattling the window panes. But within the walls of that lonely room, Lila found comfort in the echoes of the past. She was surrounded by the ghosts of soldiers, but she wasn't afraid. She was with them, and in their company, she found solace. As the first rays of dawn crept through the cracks in the curtains, Lila closed her journal, its pages filled with the stories of those who lived and died on the battlefield. She rose from her desk, her eyes shining with a newfound resolve. She walked to the mirror and gazed at her reflection, the image of a young woman on the cusp of adulthood, her face pale but determined, her eyes reflecting the strength she'd found within. She was more than just James Grayson's daughter. She was Lila Greyson, the voice of the voiceless, the memory keeper, the one who carried the torch of remembrance. She stepped out of her room and into the dawning day, her shadow stretching long and thin behind her. She walked with purpose, with grace, with the ghosts of soldiers at her side, their whispers urging her on, their memories fueling her resolve. She wasn't just a civilian, she was a soldier's daughter, and she was ready to carry on their legacy.